Good morning.
Good morning.
Blessing of the Lord be upon you.
We bless you in the name of the Lord.
Thank you.
Did you
Minor prophets.
you not turn that on?
Oh,
Does that
I don't
help
know
in
if
the
it'll
clear?
make any difference. Might illuminate me a little bit better. Minor prophets. Would you believe lesson number 50?
Yes.
Wow.
So we are going to finish Micah before a year is up. And I say Micah, of course we have looked at Amos and Jonah before that, but we can pick up speed afterwards. We're going to have a little more smaller books coming up. So Minor Prophets might only be a 2-year study if we're fortunate. But lesson number 50, Book of Micah, and we are in chapter 6, and for some reason I lost my Bible. Kept that, do that, and do that will make it look pretty good. All right. Might help if I go to Micah chapter 6 and verse 1. Last week we finished up kind of the messianic part of the book of Micah, talking about, well, let's just go back there, in the finishing up of it, the Messiah's reign, how the Messiah shall destroy all instruments of war and put down all idolatry, having taught his people to rely upon him alone. Talking about our time period right now, about the church, that the church is not a kingdom of this world as some teach. So we are living in blessed times. But now we go back to where Micah's prophecies are focusing on mainly Judah. There might be a little bit of implication there for the northern kingdom. It's not been destroyed yet, but we know it's done. Prophecy says it's done. It's over. So now we're talking about Judah in particular. So, Micah chapter 6, verses 1 through 16. The indictment of the Lord. And if this were a courtroom where God is the judge and the Lord is the prosecuting attorney, and that seems strange because we look at the Lord as our advocate, as the defense attorney. Well, he is on the side of his people, but the people who have been in rebellion to him, he is the prosecuting attorney. So here we have, in this whole chapter, the indictment of the Lord. First 5 verses. We've had all these charges. Now what does the Lord say? Defend yourself. Judah, plead your case. So let's just read down through there. Well, we'll break it down. Verses 1 and 2. The Lord rests his case. Now the defense must answer. Hear what the Lord says. Arise, plead your case before the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Hear, you mountains, the indictment of the Lord, and you enduring foundations of the earth, for the Lord has an indictment against his people, and he will contend with Israel. And again, Israel now, it's the people of God. It's the people of God under the Old Testament, but mainly he's talking about Judah. Everything has been taken care of accept the destruction with the northern kingdom. But he wants an answer. He wants them to understand why he is so upset. You know, it's like, what's the problem? We worship you on Saturday, or Sabbath, the seventh day. So what if we worship the sun on the first day of the week, S-U-N, and the moon on Monday, and all these things? What's the big problem? No, he wants to know. He wants to know. He wants them to know why he is so upset, why he is so angry that he would actually destroy them. So plead your cause. And in verse 3, he asks a very important question. How have I wearied you? Now, isn't this something that we hear even today? I go to church every Sunday, twice on Sunday, and on Wednesday the Bible study. I've got to do that? What is that? That's, well, we'd say 2 hours on Sunday morning, an hour Sunday night, and an hour on Wednesday night. And that's 4 hours. If I'm not mistaken, if you figure it out, how many hours a week? 164? Is it 164? 7 times 20, 168. 168 hours a week. All right? And we're talking about 4 hours in a week. And people say, oh, boy, that's... And for a lot of people, it's 1 hour a week, because skipped Bible class on Sunday morning. Just go to worship on Sunday morning. And sometimes it's not even the entire 5 acts of worship. It's just get there for the Lord's Supper, and as soon as the Lord's Supper's over, hit the door. Verse 3, O my people, what have I done to you? How have I wearied you? Answer me. For I brought you up from the land of Egypt and redeemed you from the house of slavery. And I sent before you, leaders, not perfect people, but leaders who were capable of leading them. Okay? Moses, Aaron, the high priest, Miriam, who could help lead the women. Again, these weren't perfect people, but they were enough to lead God's people, the Lord's people. So, how have I wearied you? Did I weary you by redeeming you from slavery? Now you think about that. What kind of a life is the life of a slave? It's not good. It has to be tiring. But what's the first thing they want to do when they get over across the Red Sea?
Go back.
We want to go back. There was food to eat. You know, they had houses. Pharaoh made them live in houses. Why? Because when they lived in tents, they could just move around and he couldn't keep control of them. So he made them live in houses. But did you ever think what those houses probably looked like?
Probably shacks and just run down and dilapidated.
Yeah, just a shack. Just a shack. They weren't mansions, that's for sure. And it didn't belong to them. It was Pharaoh's. So, yeah, he brought them up from the land of Egypt. He redeemed them from slavery. He gave them those leaders. All right? Verse 5. O my people, remember. And why should they remember? Why should they remember about Balak? What Balak king of Moab devised, and what Balaam the son of Beor answered him, and what happened from Shittim to Gilgal, that you may know the righteous acts of the Lord. Why should they know those? Why should they know those things?
Remember where they came from and where they are now.
Mm-hmm. But why should they know them?
Righteous? No.
Why should they know what he's talking about here?
Because they've lived through it, have they not?
Well, this is early. This is 730 BC. When he's talking about Balaam, he's talking about when they come out of Egypt. You're talking about at least 700 years earlier. 700 to 800 years earlier. Why should they know these things? We may not be on the same wavelength. You're looking at it, I think you're looking at it as they should know these things because they're important to them. I want to know why they should know these things practically.
To not slip back,
No. Why should they be aware of these things? Why should they even have a knowledge of these things? You see what I'm saying? Try to follow me. I'm not asking implications. I'm asking chain of events. Why should they know? About Balak and Balaam? Why should that be in their library? See what I'm saying there? Why should they, when Micah says from the Lord, hey, something happened back there with Balak and Balaam. Why should there be a connection? They would know what he's talking about. You see what I'm saying? It's like, how do we know about Jesus? How do we know about the Apostle Paul?
We know.
That was almost 2,000 years ago.
we taught it. We taught it
Where's it at?
in the Bible.
It's in the Bible. So where was Balak and Balaam? The story of Balak and Balaam.
Scrolls.
It was in their Bible, so to speak. And yes, it was in the scrolls, but where should they have been hearing that?
From their leaders or their parents or someone that knew about it enough to tell them the story.
Okay, so the priests should have been teaching it. The Levites should have been teaching it. Their parents should have been teaching them that. See, that's process. That's a word I probably should have used. Here's the process of knowing it. All right? The process of knowing it is it needs to be passed down from generation to generation to generation. Why is it that we have more Bibles in print and on digital formats It's everywhere, but why is it there's such a lack of Bible knowledge today?
It's not important to anybody
They
anymore.
don't take the time to study.
Now you're moving from process, here it is, to, now, what does that mean to me? Okay? So Micah, the Lord through Micah is saying, all right, here's this story about Balak, and he wanted to destroy Israel. Here's a word that, or a phrase that comes up. He wanted to kill it in the crib. Okay? Before it even got really started. So he gets this prophet, Balaam, to curse Israel. And Balaam asks the Lord, and the Lord says, my people, I want them to prosper. And Balaam says, I can't curse those whom the Lord blesses. But remember, Balak keeps asking him, and Balaam keeps going back and asks the Lord over and over again. Why? Well, he was a prophet to a degree, but yet there was some material gain in it for him if he would do what Balak asked him. Now, isn't that a familiar theme going through what we've talked about in Amos and Micah? Right? The priest teach for profit or for gain. The prophets were prophesying for profit or for gain. It didn't matter. Listen, for a culture to grow together and be strengthened needs a unity, and that unity is based upon the story that makes them what they are. That's why the liberal elements today are trying to destroy the story that makes us unified as America. Okay? Split us up into all these groups. Okay? You destroy the culture, and what happens?
Destroy the country.
You destroy the nation, right? So what's happening there? They were destroying, they took away their history to a degree, and their leaders became just concerned with material things. Boom, disintegrated, right? Right before them.
I had a question for you, going
Yes.
back, you know, talking about how it should be passed down from generation to generation. Isn't there a verse in the Bible that talks about write it down on your
Yes.
doorstep, and on your hearts, and something that's write it down?
Yeah, Deuteronomy chapter 6 is a good passage about that. When you're walking with your children,
Yes.
talk to them
about it.
about the Lord. Tell them, listen, when we use the word stories, the story of Balak and Balaam, all right? And we use the story about Joseph and his coat of many colors, David and Goliath. Those stories really are fundamental stories about Western culture. What we believe and why we believe it. Because what you have is, how old is the earth? Okay. Let's go by Bishop Ussher's numbers and say that right now it's about 8,000 years old. You got about 8,000 years of culture that even if you didn't believe in God, you'd have to say, look how these people approach the realities of life. And they discovered a good and peaceful way of life. And then when you see the periods of time when they walk away from it, like the Tower of Babel, like the times of Noah. Okay. Then the children of Israel come along, like the times they fall into idolatry and all. They come back to the old ways, and what happens? Peace and prosperity. Okay? It's these lessons are so important. And look, what happened from Shittim to Gilgal, that's kind of like right where they crossed the Jordan River to come into the promised land, and then to take Jericho, and then they get beat at Ai. Did we talk about that just not too long ago? Yeah. And then on up to Gilgal is really where they get the strong foothold. But who caused that? Well, the Lord did. The Lord gave it to them. They didn't have to do a whole lot as long as they relied upon the Lord. Judah, plead your case. How have I wearied you? I freed you from slavery. I redeemed you. I brought you out of Israel. I put you in the promised land.
What more do you want? Yeah.
How have I wearied you that you... Oh, the Lord's just too hard on us. The Lord's too hard on us. It's too hard to do 4 hours a week, or whatever.
Sounds like our kids today not wanting to work.
Hmm?
Said it sounds like our kids today not wanting to work. They want to
And not wanting to work, yeah.
They want to go to work, sit there and do nothing but get paid as if they're working.
Well, we have created a culture in this country, and not in this country, in the world, where you listen. There are some things that need to be done where you don't have necessarily a production that shows this was done. Okay? You can't have 100% no production. No production, all service. Okay? Okay. We can't all be school teachers. Right? If everybody was a school teacher, where would the tax money come from to pay everybody to be a school teacher? You follow me? Well, the same thing goes with McDonald's. Okay? If everybody worked at McDonald's, who'd be growing the beef to put in the burgers?
Yep, there's the beef.
There has to be productivity there. And the part where service plays typically was to, like school teachers, teach young people, grow up, how to be productive in life. Now, some of them would be school teachers to carry on. Preachers are the same way, no doubt about it, okay? But now we have, oh no, move everything over to that service, because you make more money making money or creating money out of thin air than what you do actually producing goods and actually services too. Okay. And you heard about the bank failure. All right. You know why that? This is an aside. This is free for you who will listen later on the video. But this bank was highly involved in what's called ESG.
Yeah.
Okay. They loaned money to very liberal causes, very liberal upstarts that didn't intend to make a lot of money. And it follows that pattern, get woke, go broke.
Most of it.
And now you see the
uninsured
class.
too. So
Well, only insured to $250,000.
Roku lost millions of dollars.
Undoubtedly. But that's where they put it. But that's where that was more important. It was more important to them to invest in those ESG deals, even though they knew those ESG deals were not there to make money and return to profit. It didn't help that the money the banks were lending them, the banks got for either 0 or less than 0% interest, and the Fed was actually paying them to take the money to spread out there.
The real losers are the people that invested in it, because they just,
well, yeah, some of the investors are going to take a hit, but you know, the FDIC only covers to $250,000. If you had $1 million in there, yeah, you could take a hit. Now, the money is out there somewhere, but they're going to have to call in those mortgages and those loans. And once they start doing that, they're going to take pennies on the dollar for those. And it's just, I think it's just the start of something worse. But there you go. There you go. In the 40s and 50s, books were written, movies were made about what happened in the 30s. And our children probably don't even know about It's a Wonderful Life and the bank runs there. Some of them do, some of them probably don't. What's a bank run? Never heard of a bank run. Well, they're going to hear about it now. All right. So anyway, yeah, it's like this is the Lord's doing here that we're talking about in Micah, but yet it's the Lord's doing in the fact that the Lord's not propping them up anymore. The Lord is saying, you're going to get what you deserve. So, verses 6 through 19, oh, I'm sorry, 6 through 8. 6 through 8. What does the Lord require? And hey, I've got a sermon on this. Most preachers, I think, if they do any preaching at all, they're going to have a sermon on this. What does the Lord require? The Lord wearies you? It's so hard to serve the Lord? Listen to this. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? So all this stuff, you know, here's our sacrifices. Look at this. Boom, we're going to bring it in. We're going to bring it in. And we promise you, we'll make more sacrifices to you, right? Shall I give my firstborn son, or shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? When did God ever require anybody to offer their children as sacrifices? He didn't. Now, remember with Abraham and Isaac, he told him to go, but God had a plan. The Lord had a plan. You know, I just want to see if he would do it if I told him to. And he would have. But he doesn't require that of anybody else. But, you know, the Lord, or God, the Father, did it himself. Did it himself in offering Jesus for sins. But look at verse 8. Well, no, just go back for a moment and think of what the Apostle Paul says at the beginning of 1 Corinthians 13. If I sell all of my goods and give them away and have not love, what? it's worthless, you know, and if I would give my body to be burned, without love, it's no good. Well, love, what do you mean love? Number one, love for God. Number two, love for our neighbors. That's the two commandments, right, that Jesus talked about. The first and greatest commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And the second one's likened to it, love your neighbor as yourself. Okay? Verse 8, he has told you, O man, what is good. Well, he's done the same for us, hasn't he? Yeah, told us what we can do to be complete. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice? Don't be cheating people. And don't let the criminals get away with what they're doing. Right? Stand up for the poor. To love kindness. And to walk humbly with your God. Vaya con Dios. What's that mean? No? Vaya con Dios.
One of those two. It's either hello or goodbye.
Vaya con Dios means go with God.
Ah.
See, the song, Vaya con Dios, they say it's God be with you. But it's not. Vaya con Dios. Go with God. Walk humbly with your God. That's what he requires. Outward and ostentatious acts, like, I'll bring 1,000 sheep here and sacrifice to you, Lord. There are other passages. What do I need with that? Why did God want sacrifices? Why did he ask for them in the first place?
To see if they'd obey.
Well, that's one thing, but why a blood sacrifice? Why from the time of Adam and Eve, and especially then we learned from Abel, right? Why an animal sacrifice?
For cleansing.
Why?
Because of sin.
All right. Again, we're going down this path. I'm asking, why did he want an animal sacrifice? You're telling me what an animal sacrifice does. I want to know why he wanted the animal sacrifice.
Probably to show their
Faithfulness,
to him.
their obedience, because if they didn't do
Okay,
it.
okay. Now, what did he want to show them?
His love and mercy.
In an animal sacrifice?
Well, true. I
That
wasn't thinking about the animal, I was thinking about them.
I want you to concentrate on the animal sacrifice.
well, it's because it's their sins. It should be them. That's kind of like Jesus sacrificed himself on the cross for our sins. It shows that we're sinners and that we have to.
That is true, but still not what I'm after. I want to know why. Why wasn't Cain's sacrifice acceptable to God?
Because he wasn't right in his heart and doing it.
Didn't matter. His sacrifice was not acceptable because it wasn't an animal sacrifice. Why did it have to be an animal sacrifice?
Because of the blood.
What about the blood? Tell me about the blood. What does the Bible say about the blood?
Cleanses.
I cheated.
I
I cheated, but I think I got it. God requires animal sacrifices to provide a temporary covering of sins and foreshadow the perfect and complete sacrifice that Jesus.
Okay.
Is that what you're looking for?
Well, watermelon couldn't do that. No, it's not completely what I'm looking
All right.
for. A watermelon couldn't do that. You sacrifice, I'm sacrificing this watermelon. Cain, that's not what I asked you for. I asked for something else because I wanted you to see something.
Tell us so we can see it.
Huh?
Tell us so we can see it.
What had they never seen? What had Cain and Abel never seen? What had Adam and Eve?
Death.
Well, Adam and Eve did see it, so Cain and Abel may have seen it, but death. You've got to see the death. And you talked about blood. What? Because life is in the blood, and when you take the blood out, the body is dead.
Okay.
All right? So if you're going to correlate sin and a sin offering, there must be something there that is dead. So when they offered a sin offering, when the blood was gone, the life is in the blood, they understood death, sin, the wages of sin is death. Now they know death. I deserve to die.
So doing those sacrifices in no way took care of their sin. They were still sinners.
It was,
It just to show them the death. Yeah. that makes
if they
sense.
did it by faith, it was credited to them as righteousness.
I got you. Okay.
If they didn't do it by faith, if they just, let's sin, there it is, you know, that wasn't credited to them as righteousness. And that's the difference you see in people in lots of different ways in the Old Testament. Wouldn't that kind of be like the different ways you would see, say, Jacob and Esau? That Jacob, once he got his life turned around, there was a focus on the righteousness of God, where Esau never did get turned around, even though they came from the same father and mother. They were twins, but so different. Cain and Abel to the same degree, see? But yeah, that wasn't so much concern. Yeah, they needed to do the animal sacrifices by faith, so that when Christ did die upon the cross, their sins would be washed away. Right? But 1,000 rams, is that what it says? 1,000, or is it 10,000? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams and 10,000s of rivers of oil? Is that what the Lord wants? No, He doesn't need. Those are already His. What He wants is people to believe, and that belief make a difference in their lives and what they're doing. But the only way that can happen is we've got to know the stories. And we've got to know why those stories are true and correct and will make a difference in our lives.
That's why, even though we're living under the new covenant, it's still important to look back at the Old Testament, the Old Covenant.
Romans 15:14? Yeah. 15:14, 15:4. These things were written for our understanding. Yes. The things that were written aforetime. That's what they're there for, is to help us understand and keep our heritage does not just start at the birth of Christ. Christ came from somewhere. And there's all that rich history of, here is a good way to live. And what? Look down at the end of that verse 8. To walk humbly with your God. Wow. See, that's what God wants. Those things there: justice, mercy, Faith. Faith is walking humbly with our God. God, I can't do it. I'm trying to do it your way. I'm trying to live as you would want me to live. I'm trying to do that in every area of my life. You have taught through people like Moses, people like David, people like Solomon, imperfect people, right? Imperfect people, but you've taught through them both the good example and the bad example, because they're not perfect, but you've taught through them how my life can be a good life. And I can be a blessing to people. And if I do that, I'm walking humbly with my God. Okay, let's get through this chapter. 9 through 16. Jerusalem's wickedness justifies. If this is a court case, then their wickedness justifies destruction. What are we talking about? We're talking about the Lord's judgment here. All right? Let's see. Chapter 6, verse 9. The voice of the Lord cries to the city, and it is sound wisdom to fear your name. Well, the Lord's name, what's that? Yahweh. Hear of the rod and of him who appointed it. Well, it's strange, because the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside the still waters. His rod and his staff, they comfort me. Right? His rod and his staff, but here, the rod, hear of the rod and of him who appointed it. Well, but the Lord's rod is comforting. But the Lord's appointing another rod, isn't he? What does the book of Proverbs say about the father and the son? Spare the rod and spoil the child. Okay, so this rod is a rod of punishment. I'll just jump on ahead. He's talking about the leader of Assyria. Hear of the rod, the leader of Assyria, and of him who appointed it. Who appointed that? The Lord did. The Lord did. Appointed the leader of Assyria to bring judgment on those two nations. Verse 10. Well, Psalm 111, verse 10. You'll probably get there before I do, because I don't have my small Bible. Psalm 111, verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All those who practice it have a good understanding. His praise endures forever. But what happens to those who don't practice it? It's not going to be so good for them. Verse 10, can I forget any longer the treasures of wickedness in the house of the wicked, and the scant measure that is accursed? The treasures of wickedness in the house of the wicked. Well, who's that? That's the elite, isn't it? That's the elite who have cheated people and stolen people's property. And what is it? The king of Assyria wants tribute. I won't attack you if you give me money. Well, whose money does the king give? Not his. He takes it from the people. But he still got his hanging around there, right? Verse 11. Shall I acquit the man with wicked scales, and with a bag of deceitful weights? Throughout the Old Testament, isn't that part of what's talked about? Make sure that people are not cheating other people. And that was something so very important at the early founding of this nation. Make sure that all the states, say, under the Articles of Confederation, each state kind of adopted stuff. It was like, all right, if you went from Pennsylvania to Virginia, you may have to have your money changed. No, we need one currency. Make sure it's backed by gold or silver, that it is gold or silver or copper, fine metals, whatever. One standard of weights. That's part of the things they were fighting about to get the Constitution that's there. But where did they come up with that principle? From the Bible. From the Bible. So the Lord is saying, shall I acquit the man with wicked scales, the one who cheats people, and with a bag of deceitful weights? Would that be fair? No, not at all. Verse 12, your rich men are full of violence, your inhabitants speak lies, and their tongue is deceitful in their mouth. And boy, if that isn't a sign of our times right now, how many rich people are saying, we gotta fight Russia. We gotta take a chance on starting a nuclear war over Ukraine. They're full of violence. And you see it if you do a lot looking, just go through some of the stuff on like Getter or whatever, and you see people being attacked just out of nowhere, sucker punched, what have you, attacked because they believe in orders and rules and principles and such. And again, what do they do? Somebody's paying them to not do anything. It's shameful. Shameful. But he said, shall I acquit? And the answer is no. No. Because that would make the Lord unfaithful to his purposes. Well, try to get back on track here. So, 13 through 15. Therefore I strike you with a grievous blow, making you desolate because of your sins. You shall eat, but not be satisfied, and there shall be hunger within you. You shall put away, but not preserve, and what you preserve I will give to the sword. In other words, yeah, you might have a garden this summer, but come fall, you're not going to have anything because it's going to be taken away. And that's where, was that Hosea that was talking about this summer fruit? We talked about that. The end of harvest, the summer fruit, should all be gathered in by now. Therefore I will strike you with a grievous blow, he says. Verse 16, 15, you shall sow but not reap, you shall tread olives but not anoint yourselves with oil. It's just kind of repeating the same things. You shall tread grapes, but not drink wine. Futility, right? Futility. You can't plan for the future because you don't have a future as a nation. You just don't have a future. Verse 16. For you have kept the statutes of Omri and all the works of the house of Ahab, and you have walked in their counsels, that I may make you a desolation and your inhabitants a hissing. Psst, psst. The enemy. The enemy looks at him. Psst, you're nothing. Psst. So you shall bear the scorn of my people. So, 1 Kings chapter 16 and verse 25. All right. Omri did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and did more evil than all who were before him. Well, Omri was one of the kings of the northern kingdom. Right? So what he's telling them, the kings of Judah, when you get down to this period of time, when you're talking about Ahaz, probably in particular, it's worse than Omri of the northern kingdom. Didn't you people learn anything? No, probably not. How about verse 33 of 1 Kings 16? And Ahab, remember who Ahab was? Remember him? His wife was Jezebel. His wife was the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians. And when he brought her there, she set up Baal worship in the northern kingdom. And that's what he went to, because that's where his wife went to church. And I find that a lot in the Pentecost, well, in the Pentecostals and a lot of other religions too. You ask the guy where he goes to church. Well, my wife goes down to this particular church, and so I go with her. Yeah, the wife is the spiritual leader in the home. Well, sometimes that happens. And Ahab made an Asherah, which is the female companion to Baal, but it's about fertility cult. Ahab did more to provoke the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger than all the kings of Israel who were before him. But guess who's worse? Ahaz, king of Jerusalem, king of the southern kingdom. Both Omri and Ahab did it again. Why is it doing that to me? Both Omri and Ahab, in the manner of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, changed the way the northern kingdom worshipped. They're the two that did the most to change it from worshiping the Lord to worshiping idols. And Ahaz was worse than them in the southern kingdom of Judah, where, what was in Jerusalem? What was that big building?
Temple.
The temple. He's got one right. I got one right. Yeah. The temple. Yeah. So, Their destruction was what? Justified.